Okay guys, so today I'm answering the question here from the Instagram user Think. This person asking on my Instagram, what's the difference between training for competition and training Jiu-Jitsu as a hobby? Okay, so guys, I'm gonna try to break down this question a little more, because I think there is like one option is like you train as a hobby and you don't compete. Another option is you train as a hobby and you compete, but you compete as a hobby. And another option is you train and you compete as a professional athlete. So you're doing jiu-jitsu for a living. Let's put it like this. So you're a professional athlete. And it's three different things. So let me start from the competition. So from the professional level. I think the big difference here is about the commitment. Because if you're doing jiu-jitsu for a living, if that's your job, if you're a professional athlete, your commitment to the training should be way higher than the commitment for someone who's just training as a hobby. So for example, at some point I did some data analysis on my school and I asked some questions as well about other people. Like on average, a jiu-jitsu practitioner trains jiu-jitsu 2 to 3 times per week, okay? And that's a very healthy amount of training, you know, like if you're training jiu-jitsu 2 to 3 times per week, you can get good in jiu-jitsu, you can have fun, and it's a good thing. But if you're doing jiu-jitsu professionally, if your goal is to win the World Championship or to win the ADCC as an adult, that's not enough. So you're gonna need to train 2 to 3 times per day, you know, like between like conditioning, wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, you're gonna do like 2 or 3 sessions per day. And so I think the first thing is the commitment. The commitment is the big difference. Like if your goal is to become a world champion in jiu-jitsu or ADCC champion in the adult level, your commitment should be way higher than who is training as a hobby and competing or who is just training as a hobby. But then there are people that they train as a hobby and they compete as a hobby. They compete in the Masters division and they still try to win and this and that. Now your commitment doesn't need to be as high, you know, like for example, let's say you were purple belt, master 3, and so you're probably like between 40 and 45 years old and you want to win the master worlds, or you want to win the open on your city, or you want to win the ADCC open. You don't need to commit as much as someone who is training to become a black belt world champion in the adult division. So I think the commitment is the biggest like draw line here between all of them. And then there are people that they just train jiu-jitsu as a hobby. They don't want to compete. They hate competition. And there is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong. Some people, competition is not their things. Maybe they compete very hard on their jobs. Maybe they're trying to grow their careers and they just don't feel like competing in jiu-jitsu. And no problem. Competition in jiu-jitsu, it is a good thing to test where you are and to find the gaps on your game for next day to fix your game. Because when you train every day with the same people, you don't really know where are your gaps because you all know each other and that kind of stuff. And then when you go to a tournament and you add the adrenaline and then you add the gaps that you find, this is a great thing to your game overall, to your jiu-jitsu, to your journey overall. But anyways, some people, they don't like competing. They should not compete, and that's okay. That's fine. No problem. So number one thing I would say like the commitment. Number two thing, I would say like sacrifice. If you are trying to win the World Championship or win the ADCC, besides the commitment to train hard every day, you're also gonna need to sacrifice a lot of things. So you're gonna need to sacrifice maybe you like drinking alcohol. It's not a good combination to compete in the highest level and drink alcohol. Maybe you like to party on the weekend. That's not a great combination. You should be resting on the weekend. Maybe you train very hard, but you also do other stuff on your day, and that time you should be resting to the next session. So I think you're gonna need a lot of sacrifice. You're dieting, you should be dieting really well. So you shouldn't be eating a lot of sugar, a lot of stuff that you should be doing if you're dieting. So I would say like sacrifice is the second thing. And then in my opinion, like the third thing which comes together with the commitment is the responsibility. You know, like you told yourself like, hey, I have the goal to become a world championship. This comes with a big responsibility. So you should be responsible for that. You know, like you should be You told that you gave that goal to yourself, so now you should commit to that and be responsible for that. You know, you should be accountable for that. So I think like responsibility, accountability is a big deal here between the difference, with the difference between like who trains as a hobby and who trains as professional. And then another thing that I would say is like, guys, if you're trying to become professional in Jiu-Jitsu and your goal is to win World Championships, win ADCCs, I'm gonna say something. It is very fun. Those were the best times in my life. Like I still dream nowadays that the tournament is tomorrow, or that I'm in the podium, or today is the next day of the tournament. So I won yesterday, and I have those dreams, and were literally the best moments of my life. But I just made a note here. It's fun, but it's not fun. I mean, like, winning, it's very fun. I loved the routine as well. It was very fun. But when you put together all the sacrifice that you gotta do in order to achieve those goals, it's fun, but it's not fun. You gotta be prepared, because it's gonna be a lot of sacrifice, a lot of like very sad days, a lot of frustrating days. So I think Jiu-Jitsu really teaches us a lot how to deal with frustrations. Because you're gonna get frustrated, you know, like you're gonna get frustrated on your training, you're gonna get frustrated on that tournament that you lost, you're gonna get frustrated with the referee that the referee did a mistake on your match and you lost the tournament that you were training for 1 or 2 years. So you gotta deal very well with frustrations, you know, like, so that's why I made a note here, fun but not fun. I think the journey is really fun, but there's all those obstacles that it's not fun and you gotta overcome them. And then last thing I would say here is, on those 3 scenarios, like the person just trains as a hobby, the person trains as a hobby and compete as a hobby, and the person trains a hobby and compete professionally. The age matters. Like, if your goal is to become black belt world champion in the adult division, you shouldn't be starting Jiu-Jitsu at 25 years old. You know, it's kind of too late, or 30 years old, you know, like, because the adult division goes from 18 to 30, but nowadays people are going until up to 40 or so. But if you're starting Jiu-Jitsu at 27 years old and your goal is to become a black belt ADCC champion or black belt world champion, it's gonna be really hard, really, really, really hard. So the age matters in this case. Like, I don't think nowadays people are starting at 2 or 3 years old, like Mika Galvão, for example. But I think like if you start up to until like 18, 19, 20, you still have a chance. But I would say like a great age to start to train professional is either very young or like between 10 and 16 years old. You still have a chance, you know, like I started when I was 14 years old, for example, and I think was a good age, you know, like, because everything there are pros and cons. So I know a lot of people that start very early, like 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. And by the time they were 15, 16, 17, they were completely burned out. So there is, you know, like, and I know a lot of people who succeeded a lot of Jiu-Jitsu and they started at 15, 16, 17, 18. So even like Gordon Ryan, for example, I don't think he started that young. I think he started, I also got to double check that, but if I'm not wrong, it was like 14, 15, 16, 17, something like that. So you see, like, it is doable, it is possible. But with the other side of the coin, we have like the Mika Galvãos who are starting like 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. And like my wife's cousin, which is kind of like a little brother for us, Hiram Gracie, I think he started when he was a baby, like he was born on the mat pretty much. So there are all type of cases. I started when I was 14, was able to win 5 world championships as a black belt in the IBJJF, which is the main tournament. I won the double gold, so it is possible to start like 14, 15, 16. But I think like every year this is getting harder. This is changing. This is getting harder. I think at some point Jiu-Jitsu is gonna get so crowded that those cases that you start very like 17, 18, 19 is gonna be a huge exception. So anyways, guys, I hope this clarifies a little more to you, like the difference between training to compete and train as a hobby. And I also create those 3 pillars here. So train to compete professionally, train to compete as a hobby, and just train without competing. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'm really trying to make more of these videos, like to share more experience here. And let's go to the next one. Thank you.